Um, okay, so welcome and thank you all. I really appreciate you guys taking your time out. We're going to hit some of the points that we talked about and expand a little bit on some of the things we discussed last time. We're also going to hit some of the points that we talked about in the very first Zoom meeting that I had that was focused more around innocence and wrongful conviction cases. A lot of these issues kind of overlap a little bit in terms of the way that you work a case. Initially, I worked on wrongful conviction cases, and that was my main focus. Once you get into that world and you see how many people have been done real wrong in terms of being overcharged and over sentenced, then I've kind of gotten involved in some of these other issues as well. And then with my work with Virginians for Judicial Reform, I kind of get hit up every day with some of this stuff. So I'm just going to start kind of going through. If you guys have questions as we are going through all this information, please feel free to send me a little message on the chat feature, and I will do my best to work that into everything that we're talking about. Hi, Patricia. Patricia, okay, she's connecting to audio. Okay, so what I will say is that I've been getting a lot of calls this week from some of the people that have done Zooms and just from other cases in general. And one of my biggest kind of just tips or advice is that when you're reaching out to people for help, it's really important to know the facts of the case, know where the case kind of stands, have access to, transcripts, post-conviction motions, kind of know where things stand, know what has been exhausted, and try to kind of like narrow down what your ask is. Some people, depending on how long you've been doing this, you just may not know, and that's okay. But try to be as educated and aware of where you are in the case when you're reaching out. It makes it much easier for me when someone's asking for my help if I don't have to go run down transcripts or look up information about the case. That makes it much easier. One of the things that we talked about in the first Zoom in terms of innocence and wrongful conviction, but that works with this as well, is investigating all of the individuals that were involved in the case. So, and I use the word investigate a little loosely. I do what I like to call Dateline investigations. So I enjoy using Facebook and Spokeo and newspapers.com, all of which you can do for free or you can get free trials on. A lot of times, if you have a case where someone has been overcharged and you believe they've been excessively sentenced, that is something that these prosecutors have probably done before, and you will be able to find information. It may or may not be something that you end up putting into your petition for clemency or using in your post-conviction motions. It's important to know if this is a history of the prosecutor, or do these police have allegations of mishandling other cases. It's a lot of times once someone is sold out once, it's much easier for it to become a pattern of behavior, and it kind of happens over and over again because it's easier than doing the hard work of investigating a case or charging someone or convicting someone of a crime. That's can be tough. So investigating everybody involved is key. One of the things that I use when I'm doing this is I like to look at how the narrative shifts in the media. So when a crime occurs, there are going to be stories about it for any kind of high profile case. When you go to trial, there's going to be more stories. Once they're convicted, there's going to be more stories. When you pull some samples from each of those categories, you can see how a narrative has shifted from the time that they were charged before they developed exactly what they wanted to say happened until the time that they were convicted, when they've already used and convicted that person. So you can see if they've tweaked things, if they've misrepresented facts. I just started looking at a new case in Virginia, and it's a capital murder case. And when I read the stories about this guy's case from 1995, I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I mean, like, I'm not taking this capital murder case where this person's been convicted. And then once I talked to a few people and I started seeing some of the issues with what they said happened at trial, and I remember, you know, juries are emotional people. Jurors are emotional. We feel sorry for victims of crime. And you see the way that they're convicted, you know, the story changes a little bit. What actually occurred is going to be very different from what was used to convict them at trial. So that's something for me that's been very helpful. Google is great, but a lot of the older coverage is going to hit a paywall where you're going to have to pay. And so newspapers.com has been a great reference for me. I pay for a subscription now and I just use it for all my stuff, but that's been great. So once you have gotten all your documents, you've pulled some media coverage, you've investigated the people involved in your case, you're going to look at everything that you have, and you're going to develop some kind of game plan. This is something that I talked about with Oscar in the first Zoom. There are a lot of days where I wake up and I start thinking about a case and I'm like, what am I even trying to do here? What is the point of any of this? Because it's such a long process. You get frustrated, you get in your head and you're like, where am I even at with this? And so when you develop that game plan and you have kind of incremental goals, maybe your goal is clemency. Maybe your goal is parole. In Virginia, that's a very realistic option now if you're parole eligible. But maybe that is what your goal is. And then you set those little baby steps of establishing a contact with the parole board or establishing contact with a lawyer that can help you. Those things are all going to be beneficial in keeping you focused on your game plan for your case. The next thing I would say is we talked about this, is developing your elevator talk. And so you want a brief, you know, I would say 5 to 6 minute max synopsis of your case. So for excessive sentencing and clemency cases, it's going to be a little bit different because you're not claiming innocence. So I would say pulling out some of the most significant mitigating factors in your case. Okay, so Jesse would be a great example. It's a first-time nonviolent drug offense. Should he really get life? Probably not. You know, so hitting those high points so that when you're talking to people, you get them interested with the most significant facts. For Carrie, I would say the accomplishments of her loved one since he's been in prison are absolutely remarkable. And so hitting some of those factors and things that he's done since he's been in prison, those are huge. Patricia, the same thing that when we about the accomplishments and what he's done, having a job offer at the prison you have been to go back and work at is huge. Those are all just remarkable things. So those things would all be important. Those would be things that I would include. And I'm planning on here in the next couple meetings, kind of breaking down how to put together that talk, because I know that can be kind of daunting when a case has gone on, you know, 20, 30 years. It can be a little overwhelming to try to boil it down. I'm working right now on writing a summary for a 38-year-old case. And to be honest, like when I started out, I don't even know, how do you do that? You know, it's 38 years worth of stuff. But kind of breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and attacking each one and then putting it all together can be helpful. So we're going to talk more about that later on. The next thing I would say is one of the biggest tools in your tool belt when you're working on these cases is going to be social media and or a website. And I would recommend doing both. This is your using social media and a website. It is your opportunity to tell your story, your narrative. You're able to use all of the facts that you have, trial transcripts, post-conviction relief, videos of testimony, any kind of podcast that you guys have done, or you can highlight any of the work that they've done in prison if it's an excessive sentencing charge. So many of these guys have done things that people that are free aren't able to do. I mean, it really is just very inspiring to me. And so you're able to highlight those things in your own way. Now, when you're using social media, I would say that you really want to consider you having an account on each of the major platforms. And those to me would be Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have a friend of mine who supports a lot of my work. He's a board member of the Innocence Project, and he lives on Instagram. It's just a fact. He loves it. It is his life. And that's how I connected with him. I reached out to him via email. When he finally got back to me after I emailed him every 2 weeks for 4 months, he sent me a message on Instagram. And I jumped up and down in my underwear in my kitchen on a Friday night. So I would say consider that. I would say consider using the person's name when you're on the social media accounts. People respond and connect to names. They connect and they respond to faces. I love to use pictures of my clients and other people that are involved because it makes it real for them. You're not talking about like random ideas or random things. You're connecting it with a face and with a name. And I think that helps a lot of people. So that would be something I consider. The other thing is I would like to say is like one of the things that I did early on that was really beneficial in the first case I worked on is I would have what I called campaigns. I don't know if that's really what they were, but in my mind, that's what they were. And so I did this whole about me thing because I wanted people to get to know my client the way that I knew him. And I wanted them to like him the way I liked him and respect him. And so I asked him all these various questions. I think it was about 60 questions. And he wrote me back all these answers and I had all these great quotes. And then I broke each one of them down and I made each one into a post that I could use from day to day. Darlene, I think this would be great for Jesse. A lot of the quotes that he gives you are fantastic. So what I did was I broke each one of those quotes and questions down and I did this entire maybe 2.5 month thing out of this about me thing. And then at the end, I created this whole slideshow using my Mac or whatever in the photos thing. It's actually very simple. You don't have to be that technically savvy to do it. And I put together this whole thing. And, I had people that didn't even know him that were like, oh my God, I cried when I watched that. Or because it showed pictures of him when he was a kid. It made him real. It made his life real to people in a way that it hadn't before. I think, Patricia, for your case, something like this would be very helpful for him as well. So those things, it takes a little bit of planning. It's a little bit of planning, but I will say the return that you're going to get on doing that little bit of like front end work is going to be huge. The other nice thing about those campaigns is that you can drag that out kind of as long as you want to drag that out. You can section it out with different facts about the case throughout the whole thing as well. And you can prepare all that stuff at weeks in advance. So I work a day job, where I travel 200 days a year. Not during COVID, but most of the time. And I've done that for about 13 years. So for me to be able to sit down on a Sunday and come up with my week's content, or sit down on a Sunday and do 3 weeks worth of content, was huge in the very beginning, because for me to have to try to mentally remember to do it every day was tough sometimes. And so for me, that was helpful. I use a website called Canva, Canva.com. I see some of you nodding. It makes me happy. It warms my heart. Canva has been so helpful. I have a paid account with them. I think it's $12.99 a month. You don't have to have a paid account. You can use their free version. It has all kinds of great stuff. When I go back and I look at the things that I made in the very beginning, I've talked to Lori about this a little bit. I am humiliated by these posts that I created, but it's a learning curve. And at the time, I was real proud of it. So I try not to scroll back too far, and I just focus on the improvement. But you're able to brand yourself using your name, putting your website on the things. If you don't have a website and you're just going to do Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, you can tag those accounts on the bottom. I would suggest trying to stick with the same name or something very similar on all of them, so that it makes it easy for people. But doing that and using a tool like Canva or some of the others, there are apps. When I first started, I used apps on my phone, and I would just Google like create Instagram posts. I would put that in my app store search, and it would pull up all these different apps that I could use. And so sometimes I would use it and I would run out of like what I really liked aesthetically on that app, and then I would find a new app to use. But Canva is great because I can do it all on my computer. I can pull all my photos in. So for each one of my clients, and I would suggest this too, the organization factor is going to save you a lot of time. I work on a bunch of different cases right now. So for each one of my clients, I have a folder on my desktop with all of their case documents and all of their information. I have folders within that section out transcripts from their letters to me to all these different things. So it makes it really easy for me to go in and look at. Then I have a folder on my browser on Safari with all of their information, all their accounts and things on there. And then when I go into, so I have a Mac and I'm a Mac person, but when I do my folder or my photos application on my computer, I keep a folder, an album for each one of my clients. And I try to arrange the photos in chronological order for each one of my clients, which I know it, Kara, I see you looking at me like I'm a psycho. I get it. But the thing is it saves me a lot of time because I know when I'm going in there and I'm looking for a photo of Andy Kreback when he was in 8th grade, I basically know to go to the beginning part of the album. You know what I mean? So I'm saving time. When I'm doing different campaigns for people, I will pull all those photos into my Canva in the very beginning. And then they're all there and I don't have to mess with it. The great thing also about Canva that I'll tell you is they have a mobile app. So when I'm creating all of my graphics on Canva and I'm saving them there. But really where I'm pulling them, I'm downloading them and I'm posting them 90% of the time from my phone because that's how Instagram works. And that's how I do Twitter most of the time. And so I download their app and I can pull all that stuff in. And then I also, so I sort of have 2 albums for each one of my clients in my photo application. I have the photos of all their pictures, and then I have another album for all their social media posts. So I save everything. And if I want to go in and tweak something, that's just look, we only have a certain amount of facts of every case. I mean, the info is kind of the info. So at some point in time, you're going to be reposting some of the same information. You're going to try to tweak it and make it look great. And kind of revamp it, but you're going to be posting the same info kind of over and over again. So when I go back in and I look at something, then I can tweak that post on my Canva account because I save all of them there, and then I can repost it. And that works out really well. So at some point, I'm hoping to get our good friend Lori, who's on this chat with us, to talk more about the social media stuff. Lori has some professional experience. She's very good at this. If you go and you check out the Joe D. Martin social media accounts, you'll see she does a fantastic job at representing the case, keeping it all really fresh.
Who is Joe D. Martin?
Yes, who is Joe D. Martin on Instagram and Twitter, and it's the Joe D. Martin Story on Facebook. So that's another thing that I hope to get a little bit deeper into. But yeah, consider doing one of these little campaigns. Maybe for you, maybe it's just talking about their accomplishments in prison and kind of like highlighting some of those points. If there are more mitigating factors in your case, like I think there's a lot of mitigating factors in Jesse's case and in Patricia's case and in Nicole's case and in Carrie's case and probably in Erica's case, then highlighting those mitigating factors that, you know, maybe your person did the crime, but maybe there's a whole lot more to the story that was ever put out there to the jury or to the media. And so really that channel, using the social media and using the website, that's your tool. That's your main avenue to get your story out there. And then using those accounts to try to connect with higher profile people. We all know the people that are into this kind of work. Sean King, Common, John Legend. And I know it's gonna sound crazy. Look, so there's a case I work on, and I'm gonna, this is not super complimentary of me, but I'm just gonna tell you this story. So I work on this case. This guy's been in prison for longer than I've been alive, and he's innocent, and he's in North Carolina. And it's his wife that works on this case. And I don't think she would mind me telling you this story. So her whole thing is about making something go viral. And she does the work, but her whole goal is making something go viral. And she's worked on this case for, I think, I want to say 8 or 9 years. And she's pretty much gotten there. Like, I think this last connection that she'll have, I think this will be out there like Ahmaud Arbery's case and like Breonna Taylor's case. So before, I would always say to you, be realistic with expectations, and I would continue to say that. Your goal is doing the work day to day and to putting out the good information about the case and representing your loved one or your client to the best of your ability. But don't underestimate the possibility, because there are people out there who will take notice of good work, of quality work. Lori's done a great job at this. She tags all the players that we talked about and then some, and she does a fantastic job of it, and it does not go unnoticed. And Lori's worked on this case for what, almost 3 years? Yeah, over 3 years. And I will tell you, it has taken her that long to get traction, to get the people involved that need to be involved to begin to move this case forward. It's a case that I work on with her. And so we're at that point now where things are moving. But this was another point that I wanted to make. One of the things we discussed last week was trying to align ourselves with organizations that can help our cases. Now, in some of the cases, in innocence cases, it's going to be like the Innocence Project or Proclaim Justice or Centurion Ministries. For excessive sentencing cases, it's going to be FAM. It's going to be Cut 50. It's going to be Reform Alliance, trying to get them to take note of your individual case and piggybacking, using their support to push your case along. The other thing I will say is, and this is something that, you know, is kind of a new experience for me in terms of it being on a case I work on, but now that we have that group that's working on it, it's also about making sure that they're engaged and that they stay on top of everything, because it's very easy for something like COVID to derail everything that's happening. And you don't want to let that happen. And it doesn't even have to be COVID. Things happen every day where, you know, our weekly conference call gets pushed to every other week, gets pushed to once a month, and then your case is sitting there for 6 months. And that's not satisfying to me in any kind of way. And so learning how to work with them, supporting their efforts. If an organization is willing to take your case, an organization was willing to work on a case that I'm working on, and they were kind enough to get on board with that. So I did a birthday fundraiser and I raised $660 for that organization. And thank you. And thank you to those of you that donated. I appreciate it. But what I will say is, make yourself useful to them. It's easy. People get overwhelmed. Organizations get overwhelmed. Resources are short. So make yourself as useful to them as you can. If that means donating, if that means trying to volunteer or supporting by sharing things online, all of those things can be very helpful. And also aligning yourself with these organizations is helpful, because you're going to meet people that are going to like you and are going to want to help you in whatever kind of way. It may not be with resources to start out with. It may be with suggestions. But let me tell you, I made friends with a guy at Cut 50, and this guy has helped me in more ways than I can even begin to tell you, in terms of introductions via email, willing to give me advice and tips on things that I just don't know how to do. I didn't know how to legislate I didn't know how to advocate for legislation. And really, to be fair, Carrie told me more about that than anybody else. But this guy with Cut 50 was more than willing to sit there with me for 45 minutes and explain a lot of the basics. And that is very helpful. Yes. Lori, yes, I do want you to talk on this, and I'm trying to unmute you, and
There, I got it.
Okay, go for it. Lori's going to share something with us.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, just to tag on to what Lisa just said, when I first started helping on Joe's case, he had a specific person that he wanted me to reach out to, because he had reached out to her and she had not helped him. And so I found her on LinkedIn, because I felt like that was a good place to approach her. It was a different than social media, because it's a networking website. And so I was very professional. I approached her on LinkedIn, and she responded, no, you know, I can't help you. I can't take this case on. It's not a capital case. I don't have a lot of experience or connections in Tennessee. Good luck. And so I didn't take no for an answer. I responded to her, you're right, it's not a capital case, and I'm not asking you to do the work. I am totally willing to do the work, but I don't know where to start. Um, would you be interested in mentoring me? Could I ask you some questions? Could I send you some documents to look at and you could maybe just give me some direction? And she reluctantly said yes. And so she helped me, and I sent her some documents, and we started to talk on the phone, and she said I reminded her of herself because I was so tenacious that she just couldn't say no to me. And so she's still not working actively on his case because it's not a capital case, and she is sticking to her, her lane because that's what she works on. But she has become a great friend. She's become a mentor. She actually traveled to Nashville a year and a half ago and helped in a seminar that we did to try to train people to do investigations. And, even though Joe's case didn't fit the profile of what she can take on as a client, she was willing to get to know me and to help me. So sometimes it's just about framing your ask a little differently. Someone may say no to you, come back and come back with a different ask, because you might be surprised and they might say yes. And she's become such a resource for me. Again, she turns people on to me. She just turned a national journalist on to me that is very excited about writing a multi-piece article. This is an award-winning journalist who's very excited about writing about Joe's case. And that's because she said, hey, you need to meet Lori. You need to hear about this case. And initially she told me no. So that's my success story.
Yeah, I think that can be very helpful. I'm going to include a podcast episode that I listened to recently in the notes that I send out to you guys tomorrow. And I'm hoping it will be tomorrow. My dog actually got bit yesterday, and so I'm dealing with a little bit of I don't know, situation. My dog's 5 pounds, so it was not a good deal. But anyway, I'm hoping to get the notes out to you tomorrow. And I'm going to include this podcast episode. And my friend Marty Tankleff is one of the people. Marty Tankleff was wrongfully convicted in New York, and he was wrongfully convicted of killing his parents, and he was in prison for over 20 years. But he talks about persistence, and he talks about people that you don't have to be a lawyer and you don't have to be any kind of expert to do this kind of work. You have to be dedicated, you have to be dogged, you have to be relentless in what you're doing, because these are people's lives. And we all know that, but just got to say it. Marty talks about in this podcast that he wrote 50,000 letters while he was in prison, reaching out to people to get help. And the great thing is that we don't have to do that because we're out. Marty didn't have someone doing that for him for part of the time that he was in prison. We have access. Our clients and our loved ones, they do not have access. So that's something that we can do now. And it's so much easier with, like I said, the person that initially kind of boosted me and has helped me immensely in almost every one of my cases. I connected with him on Instagram, which still just blows my mind. So we're able to reach out and connect with people in all these various ways that we didn't have, 20 years ago, and that our clients and loved ones don't have while they're in prison. But being relentless, and like Lori said, sometimes I'm not a great finesse person, but I'm getting better at it. I'm way more aggressive than I probably should be most of the time. But sometimes sitting back for a minute and letting things sit and figuring out what is the right ask, what is the right thing for me to ask them to do. I can't take on every case that I get contacted about. I wish that I could, but there's just not enough hours in the day. I don't, but I will be happy. I try to help everybody that reaches out and giving suggestions or trying to point people in the right direction. And that's the least that I can do for what people have done for me in my cases. So those are some of the main points that we talked about in the first Zoom that we didn't really discuss last week. Also, I'm going to hit a couple of the points, a couple of the things that we did talk about last week, but we didn't really get a chance to expand on. Being persistent in terms of writing and reaching out to the governor. but do it in a respectful way. I think we all know this. I know people get frustrated and stuff, but like I've seen letters sometimes that I'm like, I'm so humiliated that they're even affiliated with the case that I work on. It is frustrating, especially if it's a family member or if it's a personal relationship, you know, but always, you know, you got to be respectful when you're talking to these people because they just don't care. You know, if you leave a bad taste in their mouth, they're much less likely to do anything to help us. Using the media is another tool that we have. So I would say when you're looking to get the media involved, timing is huge in this. Like Lori talked about, Lori had, I don't think that Lori's situation with this new journalist, if this had happened 6 months ago, it would not have been as huge. It wouldn't have been as beneficial. We wouldn't really have had as much to talk about because it came at the right time and because we have things that are happening to move that situation along. It does work out and it will be helpful. But timing and finessing it and making sure you're at the right position, making sure that you're not misrepresenting things. I had one situation where a journalist felt like that someone wasn't honest with them about a few things in the case. And then the story that got written was not beneficial to me at all. I just kind of would have rather him write nothing at all than the way that it was done. Always making sure to not misrepresent everything. And honestly, if you can be like their little helper in terms of giving them information, you got a much better shot, a very positive story. So that would be important too. Creating a petition. I think this is something else that we're going to talk about more in depth down the line. But using change.org and using MoveOn as a MoveOn.org, they're both petition sites. So identifying your ask. What is your ask? Is your ask clemency? Are you asking for a new trial? Maybe you're asking for a new trial. Now, obviously, a petition is not going to get you a new trial, but the great thing about petitions is you can use them for to build an email list. Okay? So you have all these people that come on there and you push your petition on social media and you kind of build this email list. And then when you have an update, when you're trying to raise money, when something big is happening, you can use that email list to get that out there quicker. Some of my cases have petitions that have thousands and thousands of signatures, 5,000 signatures, 3,500 signatures. That's a lot of people. If each one of those people donated $1, which not all of them are, and most of them are gonna give more than $1, you know, you can hit some of these goals pretty quickly. You can put a great dent in them pretty quickly. So I would say, you know, use the petition and develop your ask, but don't be afraid that, you know, maybe you're just wanting to raise awareness and you're aware of that. But I would say, so there's a case I'm working on in Virginia right now where this man was convicted of a crime. He's been in prison for 25 years and the state did not even examine all of the physical evidence. And all we're trying to do right now is to get them to let us examine all of the physical evidence, because if they do, it's going to show that this man did not commit this crime the way that they said that they didn't commit the crime at all, but certainly didn't happen the way that they said at trial. So using a petition to build an email list and then come back when we have to raise money for a legal defense fund or whatever is going to be very helpful. So I would suggest that. And I think that we can talk more. What I did initially the first couple times when I was writing petitions was I went on change.org and I looked at other cases like mine. Lori has a great petition online. There are a lot of them online that you can go and you can read and you can kind of see the way that it's formatted. You want to keep it kind of short. You don't want to give people a novel to read. You want to link to other information. The first case that I worked on had a documentary, so I kept the link to the documentary in everything that I posted because I wanted people to hear more. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading a message right here. Yes, Lori, let's do that really quick. You got to unmute yourself again because it's being weird.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, so I was just gonna say, if you guys have approached someone who's given you an initial no, or you have somebody that you want to approach, but you're not sure how to approach them or how to best get them to say yes, I'd be happy to work with you on structuring that initial contact or that follow-up contact so you can frame the ask so that you can get a yes. Um,
Okay, so that's
in my real life, I'm a salesperson, so that that's where that comes from. But I've done a lot of reading and research too on not compromising and on getting yeses. So I'm happy to help you guys.
and that's another really great point. I sell software for my day job as well. And so the way that I look at a lot of this is I'm selling my case, I'm selling my client or my friend, and I'm selling myself. There are a lot of people who initially probably would not have been very interested in the cases that I was talking to them about, but they like me. So they're not gonna turn me down. And when you have a reasonable ask, it's very difficult for them to just turn you down outright. So I think that that's an important way to remember when you're approaching people. They have to feel good about you. They have to feel like you know what you're talking about and what you're doing, and you have to sell yourself. To be honest, I feel like I'm tap dancing about 95% of the time in life for everything. And with these cases especially, because it's all about framing it in a way that makes people feel better about it than what they did when you started talking. If you can bring up one point that they didn't know about, or you can bring up one mitigating factor, it can change the entire way that they think about the entire situation. And that can be huge. And so looking for those things and identifying those things. Nicole, when you and I spoke, the DNA, there being DNA in that case that proves that this person is innocent of that crime, that is huge. And so making sure that that is a point that you hit with other people when you talk about it with them is going to be very helpful to you. And so I think we can all identify the things in our cases that is going to be most helpful to our client, to the person in prison. The thing is too, and I'll just say this, is like, because they're in prison, they don't have a voice. They're silenced to a large extent. And so I want to represent them the best way that I possibly can, but I also want to amplify what they want to be said. And that has always been very important to me. Because my clients are in prison, they don't have access to anything. They can't call people unless they're on their phone list. They can't email someone unless that person adds them to JPay first, or whatever email service it is. And so it's always been very important to me to get their message out the very best of my ability. And I think that when you do that, and you do that from a very genuine place, people see that and they respond to that. Carrie is very much that way. I didn't know Carrie very, very well up until about maybe 18 months ago. And she's a very genuine and honest and frank person. And I appreciate that. And that makes it much easier to work with someone. So, there are reasons why all of our clients or our people got convicted. You know what I mean? And we have to be very aware of that. We have to be honest with ourselves about that. And sometimes things are absolutely misrepresented. But I think that when we're telling these stories, it's important that we be real about the story, and that we don't misrepresent any of the facts. So I think that probably down the road, we will be talking more about the petition stuff, and maybe we can pair that with the social media and talk about structuring those things. But what I did, and kind of an easy way to do it, is to go online and to look at other petitions for other excessive sentencing cases, or identify other petitions that have the same ask as yours. And you can search on all of these sites, on MoveOn and on change.org. Change.org, I think, is the gold standard as far as petition sites go that I've used. I like it very much. And so that would be the one that I would recommend, but change.org and moveon.org are both very good. So then the last thing that I'll talk about, second to the last thing that we'll talk about, is getting involved with new legislation. So for our Virginia people on here, we don't have parole. We just don't. But we do have the proposed good time bill that we talked about, the earned credit legislation that they're talking about. I want to give a big shout out to the Humanization Project in Virginia. Jen Carter has done a fabulous job at crafting this legislation and advocating for it with the General Assembly. She's a beautiful speaker, and she's very genuine and heartfelt, and I like her very much. The Humanization Project has a group on Facebook. I included it in the notes from last time. I would suggest, if you're in Virginia, to like this and be a part of this group. It's called the Humanization Project Good Time Advocates. She does a weekly Facebook Live, I believe on a Sunday evening. You'll have to check on the time because I'm in Central Time, so I can't remember exactly what time it is there for that. But she does it every week. It's very good. For a lot of us in our cases that don't have great chances at clemency because of what the crime was or whatever, this earned credit time could be huge for us. It can cut off huge chunks of time by the person participating in programming, just their behavior being good, being cooperative, all of those things. And that's huge. The institutional record makes a big difference when you're looking at these cases. I've had people reach out to me that people have been gang affiliated. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do. Situationally, sometimes when people come in and they're very young, Travion Blount, that we talked to Monique last week, Travion was 14 when he was charged, 15 when he went into an adult prison. He was gang affiliated to stay alive. I mean, that's just a fact. And so situationally, there are situations where people do that, and it's not super helpful, but it's not a roadblock either. You can work your way around that. But good behavior and all of those things matter. And we got to play the game. We're in a game, and we got to play the game to the best of our ability. So when people screw up and it becomes a habit or becomes a pattern, it can be very problematic in terms of clemency, because we're asking people to give us mercy and give us a shot. And we, people aren't even behaving in prison. That can be an issue. So, yeah. And also, when you're talking to people and trying to get them on board with your case, if there have been issues while the person has been in prison, being upfront about that can be very helpful, because finding that out 6 months down the road would totally piss me off. As an advocate, when you're trying to work on something, I need to know what I'm dealing with that way. So the last thing that I want to talk about is, and I think that most of you here are working on loved ones cases or family members or whatever the case may be. And so I will say that, I didn't realize when I got involved in this, I wasn't working on a loved one. It was someone I did not know. I'd never met him. I didn't know any but one in his family. I made the decision to move from St. Louis, Missouri to Virginia to work on that case. And I have a very all-in kind of personality. And so I decided when I moved that if my client couldn't see his family, that I could sacrifice some time with my family. And so I didn't go home for about a year to Iowa to visit my family. If my client swam and scuba dived and all those things, because my client couldn't do that for a long time, it motivated me to deny myself some of those same things. It kept me in that mindset of keeping myself motivated and disciplined and focused on the things that I was doing. I realize now that while my intention was good, the end result was bad, because I wore myself down to the point where I didn't know what end was up. When my goal in the very beginning was clemency, and I had an 18-month window from when I moved to when that governor was leaving. And so my entire life for that 18 months focused around getting to that goal. And I didn't reach that goal. And there are a lot of reasons for it, most of them political, but it is what it is. And at the last month of that situation, my hands shook constantly. I couldn't sleep. I was a wreck because I just worked myself to death. And I want to tell you, don't do that to yourself. You have to schedule time off from these things. The last couple months for me have been great because I've been home in Iowa quarantining with my family where I was raised. And so I'm staying at my sister's, and she's got 4 kids. It's crazy as hell around here, but it's been great because I've had regular distractions that are light and funny. My little niece turns 5 tomorrow, and she's ridiculous, and she just makes me laugh constantly. But it's important to work those things into your time. I take baths like 4 or 5 times a week for like 2 hours at a time. I like to sit in the bath and listen to a podcast and drink a glass of wine. And we have to do that. And like, I feel guilty sometimes. I went shortly after I started working on that first case. I went to New York City, and I go there a lot for work. And I stay in Jersey because it's cheaper. But I was in New York for this trip, and I was talking to my client on the phone, and he said, "What are you going to do today?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just going to work. I'm going to do whatever." He said, "No, man, you should get out. You should go do something that you want to do when you go there." And so I went to the Liberty, and it was something I wanted to do for a long time. And it sounds really stupid, but I wanted to go to Ellis Island. I want to go to the Statue of Liberty. And so I did. And I cried halfway through that day because I felt so guilty taking that time, not focused on what I was supposed to be doing. But I'll tell you what, that wore off after a little while. And when I went back to work that night, and when I got stuff done the next day, I felt a whole lot more refreshed and able to focus on things the way that you're supposed to be able to focus. Our minds are so overloaded with everything that we have to do in our daily life, with our job, with our kids, with our families, that we have to take time to decompress. And that, honestly, I think that was my Achilles heel. And that was one of the biggest first lessons that I learned in this stuff. And honestly, if I hadn't learned that lesson, I think I would work myself to death. I think I would literally give myself a heart attack or a stroke or something terrible. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori. My intention, I'll just tell you guys now, is the last 10 minutes of every Zoom meeting that we do, my intention is to have it be centered around self-care and about, I really want you guys to leave each Zoom meeting feeling refreshed and a little bit focused on what we're doing and being present in the moment. That's very to me. I know it sounds a little crazy, but I promise you that if you try to take that time, those few minutes every day, it will make a big difference in your life and in what you're able to do and how you're able to get work done. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori. Yeah. Okay. So I just got another message. This was an excellent night, and thank you for the text message. It's easy to feel, it's easy to get consumed in these things and to feel guilty, especially being a family. Let me tell you, your loved one in prison, they want you to enjoy your life. When you talk to them, a lot of the time when I talk to my clients, yeah, they want to talk about the work that I'm doing, but they want to hear about me walking my dog, or they want to talk to me about going to the Walmart, whatever crazy situation I saw with the people at Walmart at the store, or whatever stupid thing I did the day before. They need that. They want that. They don't want you to work yourself to death, and they don't want you to feel guilty. The situation is what it is, but it doesn't get any better when everybody's miserable and overwhelmed. So I appreciate the reminder, Carrie, to say that, and I'll probably need it again later. But I'm going to turn it over to Lori. I want to thank you guys all for taking the time to be with us tonight. I will get you the video of this meeting, and I will get you the notes tomorrow. If you have any questions, or there's anything that I missed tonight that you would like to hit me up with, please email me or text me or whatever. I think you all have my info, and I wish you all a very good night and a great week. Okay, Lori, it's up to you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just to tag into what Lisa was saying, oftentimes we work hard at our jobs. When we're finished with our jobs, we sacrifice time with our friends and loved ones to work on these cases. We feel guilty on holidays and during other times because we know they can't be with their loved ones. Right now, I've been challenged with my own stress surrounding the case that I'm working on because, due to this COVID, none of these guys can have visitors, and we're all in our own different versions of being quarantined, but it really doesn't compare to what they're going through. And, we all can feel really bad because they can't see anyone right now. And yeah, we might not see a lot of people, but we can still interact more regularly with people. And so you start to feel guilty and internalize those things. And you have to remember, we can't pour from an empty cup. And to Lisa's point, they want us to enjoy our lives. They want us, you know, they're thankful and appreciative that we're working on their cases and that we're helping them, but they want us to be happy and fulfilled. And if we're happy and fulfilled, we can bring joy to them too. When we interact with them, they can tag into that energy they feel from us. When we're uplifted, it uplifts them. So what I wanted to do today was just talk about a couple different breathing techniques that are really good for different situations that we probably are all dealing with right now, quite honestly, and even more so due to this whole like strange time in history that, you know, we're dealing with COVID and quarantine and social distancing and feeling sometimes a little emotionally distant as well. So the first one I want to talk about is called 4-square breathing, and it's 4x4. And some of you guys may have heard of this. It's a breathing technique that actually the Navy SEALs use. But what this breathing technique does is it helps reduce physical stress. It helps with your mental and emotional well-being. It helps give you mental clarity and focus. And it can help you deal with stress differently in the future, because once you get used to using this technique, you'll find that when you're in stressful situations, you'll just naturally utilize this technique. So what we're going to do is just practice it for a few rounds. So I won't be doing it. I'll just be kind of guiding you through it. But it's first we exhale, and that's strange for the first thing to do in a breathing technique, to exhale. It feels weird. But first you exhale for a 4 count, and then you hold your lungs empty for a 4 count. Then we inhale for a 4 count, and then we hold it for a 4 count, and then we exhale again. Okay, so it's out, hold, in, hold. And so I'm going to just kind of walk you guys through a few rounds of it, okay? So take a deep breath in and get ready. You can close your eyes if you want. Okay, so we're going to exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in through your nose, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4. Did you feel that? I mean, it does work. It really does work. And if you guys want to write that down, it's just exhale, hold, inhale, hold, and it's a 4 count. So it's really super easy. This next one is one that I use all the time, and I teach these to Joe too. And surprisingly, he had asked me one time, how do you deal with stress? And I told him breathing and tapping. And tapping is something we'll deal with in the future, but tapping is really helpful as well. And he's like, tapping, I've never heard of that. So I explained that to him, and he's like, what do you mean breathing? And so I've given him a couple of these breathing techniques, and he actually uses them. And sometimes we'll be on the phone, or when I visit in person, I can tell he's somewhat agitated. I'll say, you know, sometimes I do this breathing technique, and he'll be like, thank you. Because he knows what I'm saying is, I can tell that you're stressed and we don't need to talk about it, but here's a technique that might help you. This one is called 4-7-8. So it's in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. So this is like a 3 cycle, where the other one we did was a 4 cycle breathing. So we're going to go in through the nose for 4, hold it for 7, and then out through the mouth for 8. Okay. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out, 7, sorry, I messed up. Sorry, let's start over. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a lot easier to just do it than to count out loud for other people. Like, sorry about that. If you mess up, don't, just do 8 and then exhale 8. But the reason it's the way that it is, it has to do with the oxygen exchange in your lung. And then so you breathe that oxygen in and you hold it for a little bit, and then that exhaling, pushing that extra carbon dioxide out, that's what basically helps with the anxiety, and it'll also help you fall asleep. So I don't know about you guys, I've been having a lot of trouble falling asleep lately, and whatever you do, don't turn to TikTok. That will not help. That will keep you up for 2 more hours watching crazy people do that weird, like dance thing they're doing with that one song. But yeah, so don't do that. Try these breathing techniques and hopefully they will help you. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time. I really do appreciate it. If I missed something that you have questions about, if you have a particular challenge with a case that you're working on that you'd like to talk about, feel free to reach out to me. Tomorrow, one of my clients is getting out of prison after 28 years. So thank you. So tomorrow will be a little bit of a crazy day, but I'm hoping to get the notes and everything done for y'all tonight and ready to send. So if you send me something via email, it may be tomorrow night, it may be Wednesday morning when I get back to you, but I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So thank you again for your time, and I will talk to you all soon. I'll email you as soon as I have the next date. And thanks again for all your help.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lisa.
Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.